Welcome to another episode of Mental Health Mondays, where we talk to guests who are either professionals in the mental health space, advocates of mental health, or those that live with or experience a mental health challenge. And just as a reminder, if you are watching this on YouTube, make sure you mash down that button to subscribe so that you don't miss any other episodes, because I promise you, I have amazing, incredible guests that come on, and I have something really, really cool that I'm going to share at the end that's happening specifically with this podcast show. So you got to stick around to hear that information. But if you're also watching this on LinkedIn or Facebook, most likely you're following us. But if you're not, make sure you do that. So without further ado, I am going to bring up my guest for today, which I'm super excited. Dr. Kylie, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Kelly. I'm happy to be on.
Yay. So I would love for you to just share a little bit with the audience. What do you do?
Okay, so by degree, I'm a chiropractor. I don't like adjusting though. So I'm a functional medicine expert. And what that means is I get to the underlying causes of health concerns. And today we're going to talk about blood work and our normal blood work and what we should really be looking for inside that blood work and how it correlates and not correlates, but how it can cause anxiety and depression.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember actually one of the first times other than being in a mastermind group with you, I saw your TikToks. That's where I like originally started really following what you were doing, and it was just so fascinating the way that you talk about blood work in general. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. But I'm curious, like, what got you into this?
I was a Western medicine girl my whole life. When we got sick, we went and got an antibiotic because that was the thing that we did. It's just what we knew. I got into college and I really love this idea of nutrition helping solve our health concerns. So I got my bachelor's degree in nutrition. And then I realized that was just the first step, but I really didn't know what that next step was. So I took a year off and started searching around for jobs. And during that search, I got hired as an assistant to a local chiropractor. I knew nothing about chiropractic. I knew nothing about functional medicine, but I loved it. And it just made so much sense. Why don't we use this more, especially in the chronic scenarios? So I decided that I should just go get that really expensive piece of paper and start helping people the way I can help them. So I did. I went off to chiropractic school. If I were to do everything over, I would go DO, but I don't want to go back to school. So we're going to do chiropractic and specializing in functional medicine, which is my jam. And then I discovered functional medicine lab tests can be really expensive. Do we really need them? Took me down a whole long route of how do I help clients save money, but yet still get answers that I need to help make sure that they get the results that they're looking for. So I took the blood work that we already have, the CBC, the metabolic panel, the thyroid panel, the lipid panel, all the stuff that we get from our doctor's office just on like regular checkups. How do I take those normal blood work markers and turn them into answers? Took lots and lots of different trainings on it, kind of mashed my own methods together, especially after seeing thousands of labs. And now it's what I tell people. I teach people how to read their own blood work a better way.
That's amazing. It is. I mean, a lot of times they tell you what it is, right? And you're like, okay, I have no idea what the heck you just said. But or they're like, oh yeah, everything's normal. And you're like, well, I don't really feel normal. Like I know something's going on, but everything says that I'm normal. So yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, let's talk about the normal lab ranges here. Let's just jump right in, okay?
Yeah.
So the normal lab ranges are these big, long lab ranges that are determined based off of thousands of, quote, healthy individuals in the area, meaning they don't have a diagnosis or the way that they come up with them is just sad, honestly. You're literally comparing yourself to other unhealthy individuals in the area. So what we want to do is we want to say, let's do the normal lab ranges and let's make them smaller. So that way, if we fall outside of this range, now we don't feel good, but not bad enough to have a positive diagnosis. So give you an example, the TSH marker, the thyroid stimulating hormone, that is the most common lab test for thyroid. Its normal lab range is 0.5 to 5.5. That would be like trying to find your favorite restaurant somewhere between California and New York.
Wow.
Good luck, right? Whereas we can take that lab range and condense it. And so, okay, now instead of it being 5.5 to 5.5, it's 1.8 to 3. If you fall within this range, now your thyroid's functioning at a good level. But outside that range, there's a reason why you feel fatigued, can't lose weight, hard time sleeping, brain is going haywire, brain fog, and yet you're still trying to figure out a diagnosis. What we've been believed is the answer to our health concerns. Oh, once we get a diagnosis, that's an answer. Is it? No. Okay. So taking the normal range and condensing it into the functional ranges. And the guy who came up with those numbers, at least the ones that I use, are Dr. Datis Karazian. He's one of those guys that has 5 trillion letters next to his name. Somebody had to do the research and find the functional ranges for these. So that's the background and the difference between what you're seeing the doctors read your blood work and what I'm going to teach you.
That's awesome.
That makes sense?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I'm probably going to have to come back even after we talk and rewatch this and then look at my blood work and, put it all together. Yeah.
So when it comes to anxiety and depression specifically, we're going to pay attention to a few markers. And those markers are found inside the CBC with differential. It is the most common blood test we ever have had. It's like the number one lab test everybody takes to just see what's going on, right? Mm-hmm. Now, chances are you've been told your blood work is normal. Thank goodness. Because if it's not normal, now we got to go down rabbit holes of some type of diagnosis, okay? Mm-hmm. And I want to caveat this and say, I don't care what your diagnosis is. I don't care what your symptoms are. I want to know, how do I help your body get healthy? What does your body need to get healthy? And as that happens, your symptoms just go away. And your diagnoses become irrelevant. So I'll get questions like, hey, have you ever treated anybody with POTS? Have you ever treated anybody with post-traumatic PTSD? Have you ever treated anybody? Like, the list goes on and on and on. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, I have, but I don't treat their POTS. I don't treat anxiety. I don't treat depression. I treat them as a person. I treat their bodies as a whole. Like, our bodies are incredible machines that have multiple systems working together. We can't just focus on the GI tract from our gastro. We can't just focus on our hormones from our endocrinologist. We have to focus on the whole body. And when we do that, that's where magic happens.
Yeah. I think that, just in saying that, treating the whole body and not, like you said, so often people get diagnosis and they're like, oh, that's what's wrong with me, right? It's like this label and this thing that we become because somebody told us that's what we are, right? So I think that's really important that you said you treat the whole body. It's not the diagnosis. It's not whatever's happening. We're now going to look at things at an even smaller level.
Yeah, so what you are right now is just a glimpse of time. So whether you had an anxiety or depression diagnosis or PTSD or whatever it is, that's just a matter of time right now. You can change what life is like in 5 years if you want to. So just think with that perspective of, it's not a lifetime sentence. If you want it to be a lifetime sentence, then claim it as such, but it doesn't need to be. Okay. Okay. Ready for some labs?
Yes.
All right. The CBC is the complete blood cell count. It is a lab test, like I said, the most common lab test that we all get. And on that lab test, there's two different versions of it. We have just the CBC, and then we have the CBC with differential. We're going to cross all our fingers and our toes that when you go back to look at your blood work, or if you're looking at it right now as you're listening to this, that you have a CBC with differential. The CBC is a lab test worth the price of pennies if it doesn't have the differential. The differential makes it worth the lab test worth the price of gold, and you're going to find out right here, okay? So on that lab test, at the very top of the lab test, there's this white blood cell count, WBC. That's a marker, okay? Now I want you to think about all of these markers in your blood work as pieces to your puzzle. The more blood work, the more markers you have, the more pieces to your puzzle. I'm going to teach you like the big key pieces though. If you were to have a 500 piece puzzle and 488 of them are one size, the little teeny ones, and then there's 12 bigger pieces, we're going to talk about those few bigger pieces of your puzzle, okay? So the white blood cell count, WBC, is the very top marker inside the CBC. Making sense?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what the normal lab range is for that one, but I can tell you what the functional range is, and that's the one that you want to pay attention to. It's 5 to 8. So if your WBC is less than 5 or greater than 8, your body's fighting some type of infection.
Mm-hmm.
This is the most common instigator or trigger of anxiety and depression. Why? Because infections live within our bodies. Your body is so busy trying to fight these guys that it doesn't have energy for anything else. Depression. Or it's so busy fighting these guys that it doesn't take very much to overstimulate you. Anxiety. Does that make sense, Kelly?
Yeah.
Okay. Now that white blood cell marker, it's pretty good, but it's not the best. Like you're going to see your white blood cell count at like 5.2 or 7.5, or maybe even dead in the middle at like 6.5 or 7. But you always, always, always have to go down to the very bottom of the test where you're going to see 5 very, very, very important markers. These are the biggest puzzle pieces, in my opinion. This is why the CBC with differential is so important, because that differential are these 5 markers. They're going to help determine what type of infection your body is dealing with. So then we know what to treat on the back end. Okay. Follow me?
Yes.
Okay. The neutrophil count starts with an N, as in Nancy. So neutrophils, the magic number is 60%. 60. Okay. If it's less than 60, that's probably a good thing. If it's greater than 60, we know your body is fighting a bacterial infection. And that's why you're struggling. Let me give you an example of what this can look like. Okay. I get a lot of people that say my gut is a wreck. Mm-hmm. I got bloating, I got constipation, I got diarrhea, I don't think I'm absorbing my food like I am. My gut's just, I don't know what it's going to do on any given day. Okay. This is what leads to wrecked guts. Now it can go as far as IBS, IBD, Crohn's, but ultimately there's too many bad guys, bad bacteria, and not enough good guys. And depending upon what type of bad guys you have, depends on the type of gas that they produce. One type of gas leads to chronic constipation. one type of gas leads to diarrhea. So I had a 14-year-old boy I worked with very early on in clinical practice, and he had so many gut issues, meaning diarrhea, like he would go to the bathroom 5, 6, 7 times a day. That was normal for him. And he was like eating rice and chicken, like nothing, trying to fix these issues. As a 14-year-old, he wanted to go to scout camp in the summertime, but he was terrified because of 1, the food, and 2, what was his GI tract going to do? Had some major, major anxiety and depression because of what his gut was doing, right? So we took what we call the SIBO test, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. This is a breath test that can determine what type of gas your body's producing, whether it be constipation or the diarrhea gas. Now you can actually bypass that test and look at the neutrophil count on your CBC. So you can save yourself $250 of a functional medicine test just by your regular blood work and saying, oh, if it's at 68%, my gut's a wreck, I've got some anxiety and depression going on, I now know what's causing that. At least a big factor, because remember, it's all about puzzle pieces. One of those big factors are the bacterial infections. So what we did, we used a couple supplements for a space of 3-4 months. Went off to scout camp, eating regularly, fine. I remember one time he came into my office when I had a brick and mortar practice, and he's like, Kylie, I feel constipated now. Well, what do you mean you're constipated now? How many times do you go in the bathroom? 1 time a day. That to him was constipation because he was so used to having to always be, he was homeschooled too. So he could always be by the bathroom. So that's what we're looking at. Neutrophil count, 60% or higher, bacterial infection. Okay, now there's really no way to determine fungal, but I know off of thousands of labs I've seen, if there's a bacterial infection, I'm going to treat fungal too. And you can correlate this with, have you ever heard of people who have chronic UTIs?
Mm-hmm.
Like they get antibiotics for UTI and then it comes back again in 6 months. It's back again in a month and it's like just all the time. Well, the antibiotic is taking care of the bacteria, but not the co-infection, the fungal.
Interesting.
Okay. Whew, take a big deep breath because that was our first marker.
Yeah.
The second marker are the lymphocytes. Now, this one is huge for anxiety and depression and chronic fatigue. Lymphocytes, their job is to fight viruses. So if your lymphocytes are above 30%, your body's fighting a viral infection. I don't know what type of virus it is, and I don't care. Because we're going to treat with an antiviral and then support the immune system with everything that it needs. So neutrophil count, 60%. Lymphocyte count, 30%. Okay. 60-30. That's a 2-to-1 ratio. Now, I know your audience is smart, so I'm going to teach you the most important ratio you need to know inside your blood work, and it's between those exact same 2 markers. Okay. When our numbers start to meet in the middle, so say we've got neutrophils at 44% and lymphocytes at 40%. When they start to meet in the middle, that's when we're fighting autoimmune. So even though you might have a list of diagnoses or a lack of, an autoimmune isn't on there, and yet you're seeing the 1-to-1 ratio inside your blood work, now you know, oh, my immune system needs a lot of help. That's how I'm going to climb out of the hole that I'm in right now, is by helping my immune system. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, viruses and bacterial infections, they can attack anything. It really depends upon what your genes tell them to attack. So in my family, it's Parkinson's. they attack the spine. In someone else's family, it's Hashimoto's. It attacks the thyroid. In someone else's family, it's depression. It attacks the brain. Okay, so think about these infections are underlying causes or triggers to your current health state.
Mhm.
When you remove them, that's when we say, oh, you might be in this state now, but if you want to change, you can change it. You just got to give your body what it needs. So in 5 years, you can live life, even a year, you can live life how you want and not be dependent or debilitated by these diagnoses.
Yeah. That's really cool. I was taking notes while you were talking.
But it makes sense with the blood work, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Those are the big, big, big pieces that if you know those two markers, you know a lot. Now here's the other thing. If you see your neutrophil count at 68% or 72%, don't go running to your doctor saying that you have a bacterial infection. They're going to laugh at you and they're going to say, if that's what you think, let's test. They're going to test for C. diff, E. coli, Campylobacter, and unless you're like sitting on the toilet for the last 30 days straight because you have one of these bacterial infections, it's going to come back negative. Okay, these are low-grade infections that just go bypassed because we're not trained how to read blood work correctly. And then as far as treatment is concerned, antibiotics aren't going to solve these issues. So we have to look at things in a different way in order to get different results.
Actually, I have a friend who she was positive for C. diff. As you said that, I was like, oh man. And she just actually had to have a transplant to be able. This is her second time that she had to have a transplant. So
yeah, if those things are positive, I mean, it's major.
Yeah.
It's really bad. This is more of the I've got IBS, or I'm sick and tired of being told I have IBS and no one can solve issues, or I'll give you another weird case scenario with the neutrophil count. Because these can present in any way. It's just a matter of how is your body, what's the weak point in your body. So I was working with a young mom. She woke up one morning with her right shoulder not being able to move it. She's got a toddler and a baby. Can't lift them up because her shoulder is now immovable. I saw her like 4 or 5 months after this began. She had done the chiropractic massage therapy. They were doing like injections, everything to her shoulder. And I was like, well, why would I keep doing the same stuff if that hasn't worked in the past? Did anybody along the way take blood work on you? Oh yeah, my primary care doc took blood work on me, told me it was normal. Great. Go get it for me. It's like I'm a kid on Christmas morning. Wait, you got blood work and you were told it was normal? Perfect.
That's
So
awesome.
she went to the doctor's office, got her own blood work. Yes, you guys can do that. Your blood work is yours. In fact, if you have blood work already, request it. Find it in your patient portal. Anytime in the future that you get blood work, ask for the prints. Take them home with you. It's your blood work. You have a right to see them and use them. So she went and got it. And I looked at her neutrophil count and it said 88%. Whew, that's really high. How on earth is a bacterial infection stuck in her joint causing her shoulder to not move? It makes no sense. But the only way to find out is to treat. So we treated her bacterial infection with like 3 months of a supplement regimen that I created for her. Gone. Shoulder's just fine. Never touched her shoulder.
Wow.
So they can present in all sorts of ways. It's just a matter of what's your weak point in your body. That's where it's going to hang out.
That's really interesting. And I say that because there's a lot that's happened in my family, at least. But one thing that pops into my head is, at least when I'm talking about mental health in general, is those baselines, like understanding your baseline as a person, and then understanding those around you. And so that's kind of reminded me what you were talking about is, although we can be in normal range, right? We still have our own baselines as to how our bodies function, and we're all going to be different. So that was something that popped into my head, and I was like, oh, you just confirmed that, that's true with mental health and health in general. And then there's so many things going through my head because my son, he experienced seizures when he was younger, blood work, everything perfectly normal. Even they did CAT scans and EKGs or not EKGs, but EEGs, nothing. Everything was perfectly normal. So there was nothing found ever. He hasn't had them since he was a year and a half. And so we put him on CBD, which a friend advised us to. And so we tried that, and he's been seizure free ever since, which is great. So yeah, there's that normal of, well, we can't find anything. I don't know what to tell you. And that's frustrating as a parent, of course. But he also experiences encropus. That's how you say it.
What is that?
Ultimately like a backup in his colon. And so like it, like poop gets really hard, and they can't figure out why or what necessarily is causing it. And it becomes a challenge. We call it a challenge. But same thing, like when you were talking about the 14-year-old, my son's 7, and it's hard. Like it's hard as a parent to watch them like go through that. And then you do the cleanses, you do everything that you can. And like it's like they can't figure out why or what's happening other than labeling it. And so that can be frustrating.
Yeah, 7, it's really like giving them capsules to swallow like that's hard at that age. And then he's scared to go to school. Like it just affects everything in life. I would be interested to see what his blood work says.
I'm thinking about, I'm like, I don't think we've ever gotten blood work. So that may be something that I ask for.
I think he's older enough now too, because pulling blood at 1.5 is very difficult.
Yeah.
Whereas 7, you have a little more control over him. Just getting the veins could be a little tricky with the small body.
Right.
But yeah. I've actually seen several blood work from people who have, quote, epilepsy, where they have the seizures and there's really no explanation onto what's causing them. And the latest one, she's had multiple seizures in the last, I would say, year now. And there's been a couple of them where she's in the public and goes into a seizure. One was on an airplane. They were able to land at their appropriate landing spot, but they had an ambulance waiting right there for her, hauled her off, took some blood, which I love to get blood work in the moment. Mm-hmm. It's like what was going on in the moment versus what's going on, 2 weeks later when they're fine. Because it's all of a sudden, why is the body just flipping into the seizure attack? And every single time she's had a blood work in the moment, her neutrophil count is up. Mm. It's like in the 80s. Versus when she just goes to like the neurologist and she's in a total normal state, it's not. It's the craziest thing. So it's like we just have these different moments of time to get blood work and compare and contrast. When are the flares? When's normal? So now I just have her on a regimen where we keep the bacterial infection at bay. And that's just like her normal daily thing now. Mm. And it's not only helped the seizures, but it's fixed her gut too. Now she's in her mid-20s, so a little easier to treat at that age. Yeah. But with liquids, I mean, we could talk more because there's some liquids that you can apply topically that will help that bacteria that's causing the constipation.
Mm. Yeah, I would love it. I'm like, we'll have to have a side chat. Yeah. No, but I think that it's important to understand. And the question that was popping into my head is, I'm assuming you can go in and say when you're doing your lab work or whatever, you can ask for the differentials, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I get this question asked all the time. Hey, I'm going to my primary doctor. What labs should I ask for? You would totally ask for labs. Now you might have to be a little pushy about getting the whole list, but make sure you get the list. So write these down as you're listening, okay? Number 1, the CBC with differential. Number 2, the comprehensive metabolic panel. That metabolic panel, we can tell things like adrenal fatigue, leaky gut, chemical intolerance. So again, we're using normal blood work to bypass functional medicine tests. So the CBC with differential, the comprehensive metabolic panel. Then we want the lipid panel, which is your cholesterol, triglycerides, HDL, LDL, that kind of stuff. We want the iron panel. Sometimes doctors will throw a fit about this and they'll say, well, it's not indicated in the CBC. I don't care. I've seen thousands of CBCs that show no iron problem when there is an iron problem. So get the iron panel. Thyroid panel is also very helpful. And when I say thyroid panel, get the full panel. At minimum, TSH, free T3, free T4, TPO, and TG antibodies. So at minimum, those 5 markers inside a thyroid panel. You're also going to want vitamin D, blood glucose, and A1C, and all your hormones if you're interested in your hormones. And when I say all, get all of them. Don't just say, well, I have low energy, I have low libido, so test my testosterone. No, we want to see what's going on in the entire system. So get testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, and DHEA. That's the list. So next time you go to your doctor's office, take that list to them and say, hey, can you get me this blood work? That's all normal blood work. All normal blood work. So they shouldn't put too big of a fit into it, but it's the insurance game. So just make sure you get those markers because, again, it's puzzle pieces. The more puzzle pieces you have, the more complete your puzzle. So get all of them and then go grab my book on Amazon, Why Are My Labs Normal, and follow my podcast, Beyond the Diagnosis, and then you'll know what to do with all the other labs.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, just knowing what labs to ask for is, I think, huge. But then also being able to, I mean, you have a book that you can go read, you have a podcast that you can go listen, and you make it so easy for people to understand. That's what I love about what you do. And so if somebody wants to work with you specifically, other than going and watching the podcast, how can they do that?
Email my team. So DrKylie, so Dr. Kylie Team, TEAM @gmail.com.
So Dr. Kylie Team @gmail.com. And this is where you can find the podcast. Hopefully, right? Healing Beyond the Diagnosis.
That's where you can find it. If not, just go to Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast and type in Beyond the Diagnosis with Dr. Kylie.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. I was like, I don't know where I got that, but I know your website has a lot of information on there too. So Dr. Kylie Burton, put it down there. There you go. Just without all the rest on there.
Cool.
Well, I am so thankful that you came on today. I mean, that is a plethora of information. Like, I was writing down notes furiously as you were talking. But I think it's important to know that it can be fairly simple. It's something that you can ask for and request, like even when you're going in for your physical or whatever it might be. Maybe you're experiencing, like you said, depression or anxiety, or constantly getting UTIs or having constipation or gas or diarrhea or whatever it might be, right? Something's happening in your body. And so simply getting lab tests could find whatever's going on, and not necessarily through your doctor, but going and working with Kylie. Or, if that's something that you want to do, absolutely. I think that just knowing those markers and having it simplified has been really helpful. So I appreciate you sharing all of that information.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks for
Yeah.
being here too.
Any other thoughts, things that you want to share?
I think we shared so much. Just go back, listen to this, let it all sink in, really think on it, grab your blood work, see what it says, and know, like, if you want to know all your blood work, go grab the book on Amazon. I walk you through very simply how to read all the panels, and then the podcast, Beyond the Diagnosis with Dr. Kylie.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for being my guest today. I really, really appreciate you.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, y'all. That was another amazing episode of Mental Health Mondays, where we talk to guests who are either professionals in the mental health space, advocates for mental health, or those that live with or experience a mental health challenge. And I told you at the very beginning, I was going to share some exciting information with you about this podcast specifically. So we do go live. We go live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn currently, but we have been asked, or I always talk in we's because I do have a board that helps support BCC Evolution, but I have been asked to move the platform over to E360 TV. There's a new channel that's coming out, and they want to bring this podcast show over to that side, which will ultimately open up millions of viewers and potential to reach lots and lots and lots of people. So very, very excited for that. You can find us on any of the the podcast channels now. There's 7 different ones that it gets uploaded to. So that is also available. Maybe you like listening versus watching. You can absolutely do that. But it'll be in March. So we have about a month left, but starting in March, we're going to move to that other platform and be able to showcase all the incredible guests that I bring. And there's a potential of going 2 times per week. We'll see how it works out. So be sure to share this. Make sure you mash down that subscribe button. Follow us if you're not already following. And again, as a reminder, BCC Evolution is a 501c3 nonprofit. So in order to bring you all these incredible guests, all the programs that we do around mental health and suicide prevention education, man, come on, mouth and brain. We need your help. And the easiest, fastest, simplest way to do that is texting Climb for Mind to 44321. That goes to the challenge that myself and Philip are doing in August to climb 29029 in the name of mental health and suicide prevention education. And all of that goes to all of our programs that we offer across the board with mental health education. So easiest way, just text it, Climb for Mine to 44321 and make the donation today. And like I said, or if you've watched any of the other episodes, with $100 donation or more, you get the chance to put your name or a name on the front of our shirts. Maybe it's somebody you've lost by suicide. Maybe it's somebody you've lost by substance abuse or another mental health challenge, and you want to showcase them and their story. You can put their name on the fronts. And if you're a business with $1,000 donation or more, you get to put your logo on the back and show that you are linking arms with a mental health and suicide awareness nonprofit. And we'll be streaming the event. We'll be in Utah, climbing a mountain 13 times to equal 29029. So your support is very much appreciated. And if you need any other resources, like Kylie said, go back, watch this again. Think about your labs, right? Also go back and watch any of the other episodes. I just love how my guests keep toppling over each other, because that's what this show is all about, is bringing you the resources that you possibly need. So thank you so much for watching. Very excited things happening. We appreciate all the donors already. And Make sure you come back next week for another episode. Bye, y'all.